Hi, this is Wright. I'm here with Rachel Bowers, and I'm really excited for readers to get to know you a little better, Rachel. So I really appreciate you joining me today.
Hi, I'm excited to be here too.
Good, excellent. Hey, before we begin, for anyone who's just clicked through to the video and you know nothing about my recent books, let me explain quickly so you'll understand why I'm talking here with Rachel. My new book is called In Times of Rain and War. It's a story that's set in World War II during the Blitz. One of the main characters is Wesley Bowers, and he's a character who was inspired loosely, albeit, by Rachel's grandfather. Now, Rachel doesn't know a lot of his service in during the war, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Rachel, from what we talked about before, but really, he served in bomb disposal, and if I'm remembering correctly, he was just one of one or two members of his unit to make it home, who returned home. Is that right?
That's correct.
So I took that and I fictionalized much of his experience in the war in that story, except that I did base those experiences on real bomb disposal squads and real experiences there. Know that Rachel's grandfather did serve in bomb disposal during the war. And what's just as cool, even more cool actually, is that Rachel has her own amazing story. Rachel served in Iraq, and she was the person who would ride in the front of the nighttime convoys and watch for roadside bombs. And there's also this really cool connection with Rachel and her grandfather. And so I wrote Rachel's story as a follow-up, a short story that follows up the World War II story. And Rachel's story is called Saving Rachel McCally. And the coolest part is readers can download that for free. So there's the two books, the first set in World War II, the second set in Iraq. The main character in the first, Wesley Bowers, the main character in the second, his granddaughter, Rachel Bowers. And so there you go. If you haven't read the books, quit watching this video right now. Go get the books and read them first, because we will probably discuss some plot points that I don't say it'll ruin the story, but it may spoil the story. And so certainly go read those books first. Um, so with that introduction, Rachel, let's kind of get into your story. I want to start first by hearing about your childhood. Talk about where you grew up and kind of what your childhood experience was like.
I grew up in a small town in Arizona called Apache Junction. And when I was little, it was known as a not very good town. It's an old mining town, and there's a lot of bad connotation around this town. We lived in a little 50-foot trailer, had one bedroom, and at that time I was one of four kids. I was the second oldest, and my two brothers lived in the bedroom, and my parents slept on a hide-a-bed mattress on the living room floor, and I slept where the dining room was to be, where the table was supposed to be. And the best part about it is we did live on a plot of land, and so my brothers and I did run around a lot, and we got to experience some of the Arizona outdoors and in the desert. My dad, at the beginning, he worked a lot of construction in his brother's company, and later was full-time National Guard. My mom, she's always trying to get to work and trying to do stuff, but she had kids at home, so it was hard for her to move on with the career that she wanted.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about sort of the physical environment. What was the family environment like?
My mom was pretty much disconnected. She sat on the couch a lot and read those romance novels with Fabio in the front. And my dad, I think he was just, he was in his own struggle, and I think he was really depressed with his life and wanted to portray that this is what you get, like this is as good as it gets. And if you were born poor, that you're going to stay poor, and to not expect too much out of the future.
Okay, so not a lot of encouragement going on, you're saying?
No, not a lot of encouragement.
All right. And did you view that as normal? Did you know that was, how did you perceive that childhood?
As a child, you think that's just how it is. Like,
Yeah.
you have this lot in life, and that's your life. I don't think I realized that other kids had money, or more of a life, until I was a lot older. I knew that there's kids that at school that had pretty dresses that were fluffy, and there's kids that were carefree and didn't seem to have stress. But I didn't know the background of it. I didn't understand the difference between us at that time.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So transition us into sort of your teenage years and your life as you grew older. What tell us about that?
As a teenager, my parents had gotten divorced at 12, and so that played a huge part in my own development. And it made me so sad. And I grew up in a Christian home where we were taught that families were the most important thing. And so for me, it was really hard to not have my mom and dad in the same house. I was really depressed and I was angry. And I'm not sure how much worth I had until that point, but if I did have any, I lost it. I lost any importance that I felt. I was definitely lost through my teenage years. I knew I had bad grades and I didn't care. I knew that I could pass with a D and that was fine. I just needed that D to get through high school. I did try to do sports and was encouraged to do sports by my dad. His family grew up a lot in sports and that was important to him. But there's times I couldn't play because of my grades.
Mm.
I was mostly mad. I remember my teenage years as being mad and lost.
Okay. And so you joined the National Guard at what age?
I was 17 when I joined the National Guard.
You were still in high school, right?
I graduated a year early from high school.
Okay.
And got my parents' signatures and left.
Why did you join the National Guard?
I joined the National Guard. My father was very much a military man, and he really tried to encourage my older brother to join. And my brother could not or did not. Some people see it different ways. And my dad was kind of upset about that. And I felt like I could make my dad just as proud as my brother could. Yeah. And I joined the National Guard because I wanted to be a pilot at that time. And so I joined the National Guard for the education benefits. And then I had planned on later joining full-time as a pilot.
Okay. So how did your first tour come about?
My first tour happened after 9/11, and we had gotten deployed to Talil, which is in the very southern part of Iraq. It's very close to where Jessica Lynch had been captured, for those that are old enough to remember Jessica Lynch.
I am.
And we went there, and I just worked every day as a mechanic, and we had to go to Kuwait for a month until all of our equipment from Arizona arrived there. And then we drove all our equipment.
So were you married when you went on your first tour?
I was married and I had a little boy.
Back up and talk about that.
So I married my brother's best friend. I married my brother's best friend. I had grown up being told that love wasn't real. And you just marry someone you think you can make it work with. Of course, as an 18-year-old, I thought it was love. And a part of me, does love him, still loves him. He's a very good family friend. And even to this day, we still all love him. And we got married and had a little boy. And my little boy, his name was Wes. I named him after my grandfather. And it was the hardest thing I had to do up to that point, was have to leave my little 2-year-old boy.
Yeah.
When I went to Iraq.
And he stayed at home with your husband then?
Yes, he did stay at home with my husband until the very end, when my husband also got deployed. Right. And then he lived with my mom. Okay. But Wes was definitely close with both of his grandmothers.
Yeah, that I can't imagine how hard that would be to be over there and have your son at home and as a new mom, and yeah, that must have been a real struggle.
It was really hard. And for me to be away from him, it made it harder for me to call him more often. So it was this big internal struggle of, do I call him and then cry for a few hours? Or do I try to just push it out of my mind? And so when I did call him, it was very hard. He didn't understand. He would say, Mommy, just get in the car, and come home. And it would go from, well, just tell your boss that you have to come home. And, is your boss really mean? Your boss must be mean if he won't let you come home. And he would draw me pictures and send pictures of me in a cage. And I would say, it looks like Mommy's in jail. What's going on? And he would say, you're in a cage, so you can never leave me again. His little heart was so broken. I had been a stay-at-home mom until that point.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's one of the sacrifices that we don't realize our service men and women make. And when they are deployed, really, we forget about the depth of that sacrifice right there.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, the story, your story in the book really focuses more on your second tour, not the. And so let's kind of get to that. You came home from your first tour. Talk a little bit about coming home, what it was like to see your son, and then how did you end up on your second tour and why?
So I came home from my first tour, and for me, I feel like coming home is the hardest part of any tour. And so it's just a hard adjustment. You see people laughing and smiling and not having any clue about what's happening on the other side of the world and what people are going through. And in a way, that's a blessing that America can offer to us as its citizens. That was really hard. And when I came home, and you just get through that part of it, and you just try to think like, I was warned about this, and I've got to mentally change how I'm thinking, and I have to move on with my life. And just snuggling up with my little man, my little Wesley, and his excitement and love, and that can cure a lot of things. At the same time, I felt guilty. I felt like a bad mother because I did leave him. I felt like a bad mom because of some choices that I had made. And I also felt like my tour wasn't action packed. It didn't define me in any way, I felt like. And when I had heard of the opportunity to go on a deployment that was definitely going to see combat, I was really excited, and I really wanted to do it. And I talked to my son's dad, and he understood that drive. He had come back from his tour, and we were both home for a couple months when I left on my second tour. I really wanted to see combat. I really wanted to see how I would react under the pressure of something like that. I wanted to know how strong I was.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating dynamic because on the one hand, you're so anxious to get home to your son, and yet you volunteer for the second tour because you have these feelings of not feeling like you're a good mom and wanting to know yourself. Like those are all these feelings that are battling. I just find that so interesting. That must have just been a real struggle to make that decision to finally go.
It was a real struggle in some ways. Just knowing that I didn't know it at the time, but when I look back, I think of how little I felt of myself and how little worth I had in all of my doing up until that point. And, I guess I did hear a lot of my dad's voice and a lot of his thoughts and things about life in that. And I felt like I wasn't measuring up to that. And I felt like my son, I felt like he'd be better off. And as much as I wanted to be with him, I thought that he would be better without me because of that internal struggle.
Yeah. Okay, well, so let's then jump to your second tour. You get to Iraq. You're stationed at Camp Anaconda. You're attached to the 101st Airborne, right? Do I have all that right?
Yes.
What were you doing? What was your unit doing there? tell us about the convoys and the things you would do there.
So it was convoy security. The convoys that we took from camp to camp, they had food, they had supplies, they had things that every base needed. These semis, though, they weren't allowed to have weapons. And so as a security forces, we were the guns, and we protected that load of supplies. So we would take them from camp to camp through the night. And we traveled at night because at that time, the Iraqis had a curfew and they couldn't, they weren't supposed to be out after dark. And so already that made it safer for us because there's less people on the road.
Okay. And what was your job at the beginning of that tour with the convoys? What did you do?
At that time, I was the driver for the convoy commander. I was my platoon leader. And even though I was an NCO at the time, I ended up being his driver.
And that was the second vehicle in the convoy, right? The lead vehicle?
At the beginning of the convoy, it was the third vehicle. We had 2 scout vehicles at that time that would go ahead of us. And then there was me, and then I would control the speed of the convoy behind me. So the first semi was behind me.
Okay. And again, so listeners know, so that these military vehicles are interspersed into this long convoy of semi trucks as they're going from base to base. And so you're a couple of vehicles, 3 vehicles behind the lead convoy. You kept asking to be lead vehicle commander. Tell us what that job entails and why you wanted that job.
You know, I didn't ask for that until after my squad leader died.
Oh, okay.
And
you know what? Let's jump right to that. Let's talk about, this is the first time that your convoys hit, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I found a bomb. I think only 1 IED at that time until this convoy. And the unit kind of called us ghosts in the night because we were the only platoon that had not been hit or anything. And I don't know if we got lazy because of that. I'm not sure. But as we left the base, we wanted to get out there and get going. And so we were the first ones out the gate. And it was an area that was pretty flat and there was not a whole lot of homes nearby. There was this big curve in the road. And as we were driving, everything was going perfect as it always had. And all of a sudden we saw gun 1 being engulfed by flames. And, you know, you can see before you can hear. And as the sound wave came towards us, you can kind of see it. And I thought I had made it up at first. I thought it was my own imagination that made it up. But I remember calling on the radio, gun 1 was hit. And then gun 2 had called up saying gun 1 was hit. And then the sound wave hit us. And so it was pretty eye-opening for all of us. At that time, gun 2 had gone to the gun 1 to see what they could help with and try and get the people out of that vehicle. And because I was the first in front of the civilian vehicles, in front of the semis, we hold the security for them. And so we're their protection. So we have to stay there to protect the first civilian vehicle. Gun 2 needed help, and the convoy commander needed to be up there on scene to see what was happening. So we had to wait for one of the other guns in the middle of the convoy to come up and take the front protection and security for that vehicle before we could go up and help out with gun 1 and gun 2.
So once that vehicle comes up and arrives, talk us through what happened.
Then we ran up to gun 1. Also, we had an aid and litter vehicle in the back of the convoy. They stay in the back of the convoy. And our medic is in the middle of the convoy, as the middle is probably the safest place. And so as gun 1 is the aid and litter vehicle, they came up, picked up the medic, and then went up to go help with gun 1. Because they are the rear of the security for the convoy, they also had to wait for somebody to take their security position. And so gun 2 and the aid and litter vehicle were both at gun 1 by the time we had gotten there. And we then also had to create security around gun 1. And by the time we got there, the platoon leader, my convoy commander, he had gotten out, looked at what was happening, said, "Rachel, they need help." I had my gunner take over the radios at that time while I went to see what I could do with my squad leader's vehicle. My squad leader was the lead vehicle commander at that time in gun 1. And they had already gotten out the front passenger of that vehicle. So he was a young man who was 19, and he had been being trained to be the lead vehicle commander. And so my squad leader was training him, and he was driving at that time. And the 19-year-old boy was already in the back of the aid and litter vehicle. And at that time, there was another sergeant who was kind of out of his mind, and he was giving me all sorts of different orders and telling me what to do, and every order was completely opposite of the one 30 seconds prior. At one time, he even handed me his weapon and told me to pull security. And then he grabbed his weapon back. It was so bizarre. He was just not with it. And I kind of tried to find my own place and how I could help people. I had gotten up on top of the vehicle that had been blown up, and it's called an ASV. And the front, it's kind of a mini tank on wheels, and the front 2 tires had been blown off. And I climbed up there, and there's hatches above both of the front seats, and there's people in each of those hatches trying to push out my squad leader, who was in the driver's seat. And so I went around. There's a hatch on the side, and there's also 2 people in there. And the thing is, we're wearing our body armor, and the body armor has a whole bunch of loops and things on it so we can attach gear and things to it. And all those loops were getting caught on stuff. And for some reason, there was just enough space for me to fit my little arm in. And I found the handle on the back of his vest, and I pulled on it, hoping I would help pull him out. But instead, it just pulled the vest off. And once that vest was off, we were able to get him out further. And I had another battle buddy that was sitting in the turret of the gun inside of that vehicle. And he was able to also push from the inside. And we were able to finally get him out. Once he was on the ground, and we could assess the situation, and we could see that he was in really bad shape. He was not conscious at the very beginning. And my friend and I, we all called out that he needed tourniquets. And at this time, I'm still thinking I'm this useless person. And they're like, who's got a CAT? Who's got a combat action tourniquet is what they're called. And I took mine off my vest and held out my hands for someone else to take it from me. And nobody did. Nobody took it from me. And so I was like, I guess I got to do it. I guess I'm the person doing this. And so as I was down there trying to get his leg fixed up, and my buddy was doing the other leg, there's so many rules to it. You want to keep it from a joint, but you want to keep it so far above the actual wound. And I remember thinking, like, I'm going to try and save his knee. So hopefully this is a good place to put this tourniquet, and hoping I did it tight enough. Your adrenaline is going so much. You have all this strength. And so we both got the tourniquets on. And at this time, my squad leader started waking up. Not completely awake. He just kept, he was groggy and just kept saying things like, "Let me go. You can't help me." And, there's just this certain look in his eye that I will never forget. It was like he was already gone to me. And we were able to pick up his litter, and then we had to take it to the 5-ton and scoot it up on the bed of the 5-ton. And we were kind of on a little bit of a slope, and so the bed of the 5-ton was at my shoulder, and I'm this little girl. And before, when we practiced this, I wasn't ever able to lift somebody that high. And so I was at the front and I was already saying, like, I won't be able to do this. I can't do this. But as I was saying how I can't do it, I did lift him and we put him up on the aid and litter vehicle. And then my medic was able to start working on him.
That's great. I love that. I love that story.
Yes, it's kind of funny how much you doubt yourself and your body can take over when it needs to.
Yeah, that as you're telling them you can't do it, you somehow find the strength.
I'm doing it, yes.
Okay, so the medic is now working on him, and he's the guy that you called Preacher, right?
Yes, we called him Preacher.
Okay, and so talk us through then. And I of course know your story, and so I'll fill in some as we tell it here. But then the helicopter arrives. They're going to evacuate him to a hospital. Talk us through what happened at that point.
So at that time, we still have to assess the scene. We have to clear things up. The gunner that had been in gun 1, he was in shock, and I had been assigned to take care of him and watch him. And he was so antsy, and he wanted to go storm the nearest town and make them pay. You know, he was conscious enough to know what had happened, but he doesn't remember any of it. And so I'm trying to take care of him, and I'm thinking I got to keep him busy. So we go and get all the ammo and the gear that is needed out of gun 1. We got the weapons and things like that. And that took some time, you know, loading and unloading these ammo boxes and putting them in the back of the aid and litter vehicle. And so we helped each other get all the ammo boxes and the guns and stuff out of that vehicle. And I got up in the back of the aid and litter vehicle, and he's handing me these ammo boxes. You know, there's 50 cal rounds in there. There's 2 or 3 grenades and things like that, and that we're putting into the back of the vehicle. And in moments when I would turn around and watch my medic working on my 2 guys. And she's doing CPR. She's doing CPR on my squad leader, on Preacher. And, you know, there's a light shining down on them, which is really against the rules. We're not supposed to have lights on because that makes us a bigger target. People can see what we're doing from a distance. And I remember looking back and seeing that 19-year-old's face, and he's just staring at our squad leader. And it's like I could see the innocence leaving him. I don't know if it's because I'm a mom, but me and the other older girls that had children, we loved these younger guys, and we would always come up with little names for them. And it was hard to see that leaving him. We're just trying to get all the gear in the back of the truck, and I would say, you can make it, come on, we all love you, you've got this. And we try to give him encouragement. And there's a couple gunners in that aid and litter vehicle that would be looking down too and saying the same things, you know, you can do this, come on. And we had a secondary medic that had been in the gun turret for a little while of the aid and litter vehicle, and my medic would look up at her and be like, am I forgetting anything? What am I not doing? When is the bird going to get here? And so they would offer encouragement to each other. And once all the ammo and everything was loaded in there, I went back to my vehicle and got on the radios. There was a time I still had to try and let the assistant convoy commander back in the back. I had to let him know what was happening. And at the same time, you want to do it so that the other young people in the platoon don't understand what's happening, because you want to protect them until the mission is over. And so you're trying to be secretive about that, and you're trying to do what you can. At the same time, the rest of the convoy had thought they found another IED, so they also had to separate. And so they had to provide protection for 2 different groups, plus we had our protection on gun 1. So it's like we were in 3 different groups, and we had to provide protection for everything, security for it all. So it was a very high stress situation. And my convoy commander, I remember him just trying so hard, and his own self-doubt you can see in his face. And I know one of the other moms like she put her hands on him and she's like, you are doing everything you can. You're doing amazing. And we're all here to support you. And just trying to give encouragement and love wherever we could. Those little things that aren't really so little in the moment.
That's great.
And the bird, we just, it's high stress and your adrenaline's going everywhere. And we just kept waiting for this helicopter to arrive. And then we got the call, like, signal, you got to signal the helicopter. Where's he supposed to land? And the person that was supposed to signal, they teach us to use a chem light and fling it around so that the bird can see this chem light, or glow stick. I think civilians call them glow sticks. And he's like, I don't have anything to swing it on. And that was a funny moment that we could all laugh at. And I said on the radio, I said some profanity on the radio, and it was then passed on from kind of a screw up in the platoon to this sergeant. And so it was very inappropriate, but it was very funny at the same time. And so this guy took his shoelace off and he was very mad. He had to use his shoelace to put the chem light on it and swing it around. And he was also upset because he knew it made him a target if there's a sniper or something out there. But the bird finally came, and I was also one of the 4 that took my squad leader and ran him to the bird. I've never been so exhausted in my life. Just my adrenaline had started to run out at that point. And we took him, we had to run him over to this bird, and we go through all these situations and scenarios, but we never had practiced loading somebody onto a helicopter. And we actually approached the helicopter from the worst possible place that you could, where the blades of the helicopter are at their lowest. And I remember running to it and holding the litter with one hand and trying to bend down. And I'm thinking, do we really need to bend down, or is that what Hollywood does? And, I remember just being so slow in that moment, that those seconds lasted moments, and just feeling and hearing the blades go by, and finally getting to the bird. And in that moment, I had lost my strength, and it took me a second to put him up on the litter. And I finally did get it. And one of the medics on the helicopter had lowered the litter a little bit for me to be able to get just the edge onto the lip of that and slide him on. And I remember walking back to the scene and just like being so exhausted and not being able to catch my breath, and wanting to like take in the situation, but at the same time knowing I needed to be vigilant and be aware of everything around me.
Yeah, that's amazing. So the helicopter takes off. They have him on it. Then what did you guys do as a convoy? What happened at that point?
We then had to clean up. We had to clean up the area. We had to check the people in the back. We still had the gunner that had been in Gun 1 that was wandering around wanting to go storm the village. And we had to regroup. We had to find another lead vehicle. We had to find somebody that kind of knew what was happening, that would be willing to take over. I remember my commanding officer saying, how can I ask somebody to be up there? How can I ask somebody to be up there when they just saw what happened? Yeah. And I remember the other leaders in the platoon, some of them had started crying. And I remember just standing there and overlooking the scene and thinking, like, I'm the girl. I'm the one that's supposed to be breaking down right now. I'm the one that's supposed to be crying. And just being aware in that moment. And I remember in that moment thinking, you are more than anyone ever said you were. You were more than you ever thought you could be. And we had to have the wrecker from the back come and lift the ASV. And I think it was just, then we had to wait for the bomb squad to come out and check that other bomb and IED to make sure it was safe so we could continue mission. So it took a long time. It took hours for us to be able to go home.
Oh, you have no idea how Preacher's doing. You don't know his condition, right?
We have no idea what happened.
Yeah.
And our medic went with him.
Yeah.
Um,
Talk about as you're driving back in the convoy, and you talk about listening to music. I think that's amazing.
For me, we weren't allowed to be listening to music because it made us less aware of our surroundings. We couldn't be as vigilant. And that was the only way I was able to make it. And I remember having my iPod and putting my earbud in where my commander couldn't see it because he would tell me not to wear it, you know. And we have these mics that come off of our headsets to our mouth, and I took it away from my mouth. And I was listening to this music and just screaming. It was screaming music, and I just had to scream along with it. And there was a song I just kept replaying over and over and over because I could scream, because it could get out anger and keep in the sadness. And I would just scream that song the whole way home. And the gunner that had been in Gun 1, he took the 4th seat in the Humvee I was in. And he said that's the first thing he remembers. He says he remembers a big flame coming in from the ground. He remembers putting his hands up to try and block his face from this flame. And the next thing he remembers was being in the back of a Humvee and listening to me sing this screaming song. He didn't know what happened. He didn't remember anything in between. He just remembers me screaming a song.
And you're screaming just to keep the emotion away because you know you'll break down otherwise.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes I would be quiet and stop singing, and I would feel the emotions come into me. And I just had to listen to the song. And the more I sang it and screamed, the more I could hold back everything that was inside of me until we got home.
Yeah. Tell us what happened when you got back.
When we got back, you knew that everybody knew. You knew that they usually don't have maintenance platoon there. And we usually come home and we offload our gear, and then we go into the maintenance. We go into the maintenance bay, and we make sure our tires are full. We make sure our lights are working. We make sure everything in our vehicles is good and working and looks good. And this time that didn't happen. We pulled in. We didn't have to offload anything. Maintenance was there, and they said, "We've got you." They said, "We've got you, and we'll take care of all of this." And they wouldn't say anything to us. They couldn't answer any questions. And I remember just walking around the motor pool, just speed walking around in this big circle, trying to keep it in because I knew what they were going to say. And I don't remember how long we were walking around. And they took us into this room, and it's really the day room if we all want to go watch a movie together or see what post has brought us. You know, it had treats and things in it. And we watched our commander come in. She was this cute little girl. And she came in and she told us that our medic was doing good. She told us that the 19-year-old was going to recover and that he was doing fine, that he survived. And then she told us that my squad leader had died. And we all just stood there. We all just stood there in silence. And I don't remember much after that. I remember we all stood and stayed in that room. And when we felt like we could go back to our rooms, we did. And slowly everyone left. And to me at that time, the most interesting thing was how I could tell which soldiers had mothers and which ones didn't. Mm. And it seems like the ones that didn't have moms, they couldn't handle their emotions. And they stayed the longest, but they didn't show any emotion. But they wouldn't talk to you either. If you asked them a question, it was just you could always tell. And then I remember walking back to my room, and I looked down at my hands and noticed that they were still covered in blood because I had to get some radios and stuff out of a pool of blood that had been on the floor of that vehicle. And I had to run my fingers through the blood to try and make sure there's nothing in it. And I remember just looking at the blood and thinking, like, this is my squad leader.
Wow. And you, first of all, I have to say, you're amazing, Rachel.
Thank you.
The time to go through this, I know some of it's emotional, and I can feel that emotion as you tell us about it, and I appreciate you doing that. Tell us about the bathroom attendant.
We had this. There was we would call them third country nationals, and they were hired by the U.S. to take care of things around base, or sometimes they even drove some of the vehicles. But there's this sweet woman that cleaned our shower trailer, and it was just a trailer, and half of the trailer was toilets and sinks, and the other half was showers. And I remember going in there, and at Christmas time, I had gotten a stocking, and I stuffed it full of goodies and gave it to her. And she couldn't speak very much English, and she was from somewhere in Africa. And she saw me, and she was happy to see me, and we always hugged each other and tried to talk and communicate. And I remember her seeing me, and I remember the smile on her face fade as she saw that I was holding back emotions, and I showed her my hands, and I tried to wash them, and she just stood there and cried with me as I washed my hands. And she, we couldn't really say anything, but she stood there with me in those moments.
It's like such a touching moment. It makes me cry.
Yes.
So some time passes, you start going back out on the convoys again, but now you've had a little bit of a change of attitude because of this experience, and so now you want to be LVC. Is that right? Do I have that right?
Yes. Before I was not a good soldier. I had a smart mouth and very sarcastic to my leaders, and this experience had changed me. Today is the anniversary, actually.
Oh, wow.
Of it all. Wow. And I remember we went to this camp that was very close. It was only an hour to an hour and a half away. And so it was always a quick turnaround, but we sat in this cafeteria in the middle of the night and just talking to each other, just, making the time pass. And I remember sitting away from the group with my platoon leader and my platoon sergeant, and just talking to them and expressing stuff. And that's really what led to my change and me asking to be the leader, the lead vehicle commander. And it took them a while before they allowed me that opportunity. Okay. After I forced them to allow me that opportunity.
Wow, it took you doing what? What did you finally have to do to get that position?
I kept asking for it, and my platoon leader let me have one chance, and then he was like, there, you got your chance, and I kept asking for it again, and he kept saying no. And there's times that he would be like, you're a mom, you can't do that. And I'd be like, you're dad, these guys are dads, are you telling me that being a mom is more important than being a dad? No man will ever admit that. Well, they wouldn't anyways. I don't know that I'd say no man, but they didn't. Yeah. And I said, fine, I guess I'll go talk to the EO sergeant, the EO rep. And he was like, no, don't do that. And I was like, then let me up front. And
so listeners know EO is what? Equal opportunity, right?
Equal opportunity, yes. I said, you're doing this because I'm a girl.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah.
He finally relented and allowed me to be up front.
Okay. Which is amazing, because it is the most dangerous spot in the convoy. It's the vehicle that's going to get hit.
Yes.
But I just love that you're now finding self-worth, that you're realizing, hey, I am important. I am somebody. Talk us through, just let listeners know. So in that position, you started to do very well at finding IEDs. to the point that your unit was you received an award for finding the most IEDs. Talk about that. Talk about that, and then why you think you were able to find them. What was it?
At first, well, just to explain a little bit, the lead vehicle gets hit 90% of the time because IEDs, almost all of them have a pressure wire. So when your tire rolls over it, that's what will make it explode. A lot of them usually have a radio communication, so someone can push a button and then it will explode. But each military vehicle has a scrambler on it, and it would scramble the signal for it to explode, which is why they have the pressure wire. So I just remember seeing anything weird on the road, anything that was out of the ordinary. You know, sometimes it was trash, sometimes it was a tire, sometimes some of the most obvious ones was, you know, it's a desert and it's hot out there and everything is dry, but there'd be a pile of moist dirt next to the road. And so you look at it closer and then you see two wires coming off the outside, the back end of this little hill, you know. So at first I just marked everything. I called every single little thing that I could do. And my poor gunner, it was his job to throw out these chem lights to mark it for everyone in the back. So we would joke that he would keep a tourniquet on his hand so that if it got blown up, he would just have to tighten it and he would be fine. The biggest one and the most important one, I had woken up, you know, it was probably 2 or 3 in the afternoon because we traveled at night, you know. And yeah. I remember waking up with this awful feeling that tonight was my night. Tonight is the night that it was my time to go. And I remember thinking, like, it can't be because I have all these things. I have all this unfinished business. And then I would think, okay, well, what is my unfinished business? And I'd think, oh, I have to repent. And then I would say, you can't repent just because you know you're dying, you know, but God knows I'm doing my best. And then I thought, okay, I have so much I have to say to my son. And then I thought, no, I wrote a letter. If I don't come back, this is all the things I needed to tell him. And then I thought, okay, that's pretty much it. You know, I can't tell my team. They'll think I'm crazy. And I remember it was one of those days where I wanted to reward my team. And I went and bought pizza and brought it to them as we were prepping for that night. And I just kept having this recurring thought, like, tonight's your night, you're going to go tonight, you know, what do you got to do? And those things would play over in my head. And I remember even as we were leaving the gate, we often call it leaving the wire. And as we were leaving the wire, and we have this pit that we fire into just to make sure our weapons are working. And I remember thinking, this is it. And I knew we were going through a route where we always got hit or we always got shot at or something was always happening. And as we were getting closer to that, you know, there's some places that have really tall bamboo. And I'm thinking, like, it'd be so easy. This is like a great place. And nothing happened there. And so we went and we turned down, started going down where this hot route is. We call it a hot route. And as we got closer, you know, I'm just staring out the window thinking, I got to find this. I have to find this IED in front of me. And then I'm thinking, no, it doesn't matter if I see it. My driver has to see it. And my driver, actually, he was training to be a lead vehicle commander. I was training him to be another one. And he was also the other person that helped with the tourniquet on my squad leader's other leg. So we already were very close. I felt like we had a good relationship and trusted each other. And we kept going down the road, and I'm holding this little handlebar. There's a little bar in front of me, and our windshield is not very big. It's 3 or 4 inches thick, but it's not very big. And I remember just staring out that window thinking, I got to see it. And it's traveling at night, and our front gun has all these floodlights all over the front. And I'm just staring at where those lights fade into the darkness. And I'm staring, and we're in a very heavy vehicle. So it doesn't stop fast. We're going 50 miles an hour. which is over what we're supposed to be going. And I'm thinking, we're doing the best we can. I've got to see it. I just got to see it. I just got to see it. And as we're moving along, I keep hearing this voice like, Rachel, you're getting closer. Rachel, it's coming. Rachel, you got to see it. And the voice is getting faster. And like, Rachel, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And I remember like grabbing my gunner or my driver's knee and just squeezing it. And all of a sudden we see this big pothole, and there's like a lime colored soda bottle and the corner of a black box and these two wires going off into the field. And he swerved as fast as he could into the median, which is actually something we're always taught not to do. And I had already been built up. My adrenaline was already running, and I immediately was like, stop the convoy. I'm yelling back at everybody. And so we had to wait. We waited there for the bomb squad to come out. But when I had replayed that to a couple of people, I told only 2 or 3 people that I had heard these voices. And my driver, he said, there's no reason that I would have ever turned into the median. He said, we're taught not to do that, and I'm so good. There's no reason that I would have to do that. And the ones that I told in the platoon, they attribute that voice to being our squad leader. But my family and we also attributed it to being my grandfather, Wesley. Yeah. He was such a spiritual giant in our family.
Amazing. Talk about now, so 2 miles down the road, you get hit by a lot of small arms fire. Talk about that and how that ties into the story.
Yes. So when the bomb squad did come out, it's always fun to talk about that. The black box we saw was the battery power that ignited the bomb, and the bottle had accelerant in it. And what happens is when the bomb explodes, it throws that accelerant on the vehicle and it melts the armor. And it all happens within milliseconds, and the bomb gets into the armored vehicle. There's 5 inches of armor on our vehicles. And then the 2 wires, one was a pressure, one was a radio wire. On our way home from that trip, and that bomb had been set up again for a convoy ahead of us. And they weren't as lucky as we were. But our standard operating procedure is once you get hit, you'll drive forward a few miles to get out of the kill zone, and then assess your platoon. You assess what's going on and who needs help, and if somebody needs replaced, and if your vehicle, needs to be towed. We have run flat tires, so you can usually go for a little bit to get out of the kill zone, but it eventually will need to be towed. And so there was that bomb, and standard operating procedure was the few miles ahead. And in that point, the few miles ahead, we were ambushed, and we were under heavy attack with small arms fire. So we feel it had been their idea to hurt us and then have us stop right in their ambush. So we were able to, because we didn't actually get hit, we were able to just drive through it. Our vehicles are very secure for small arms fire.
Yeah. And, so had you hit the bomb, not only likely would everybody in that vehicle have been killed, they would have stopped at that spot where the ambush was, and most likely others could have been killed.
Absolutely. There definitely would have been very difficult to have recovery operations.
Yeah.
Situation.
Yeah. So tell us about your relationship with your grandfather, what you remember about him.
My grandfather was the most loving man. You could feel his love when you were around him. I can say that as a grandchild. I don't know that his kids would say the same thing, but as a grandchild, he was always very loving and very warm, and had these big sloppy kisses that he would attack you and give you a kiss. When you would walk into his house, there was a wall And he always stood on the edge of that wall. And so as you walked past, he would grab you and give you a big hug and a wet kiss, tell you he loved you.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears. Your service ended. You came home. Talk about coming home and the difficulties that you faced and kind of your life when you came home, and talk about that.
Like I said before, coming home is the hardest. You know, in this situation, it was harder because you feel like you left someone there. You feel like not only our squad leader who had died over there, you feel like you left parts of yourself there, and you have new parts to you, and you come home and you're expected to just fit back in and pick up where you left off. It takes a long time, and maybe never are you that back to where you were. And it's something you can't explain to people. It's something they won't ever understand unless they've been there. And it's very hard. Even small things. I moved in with my grandparents in a transitionary period before I moved states, and I was staying there, and I'm sure some little kid just thought it was fun and put this string across the road. And I remember part of me, I was braking, but then I was putting on the gas, and I was braking, and I was putting on the gas, and I remember it's like your mind is fighting you. Like your mind is, half of it saying, you're gonna die, and the other half is like, you're home, you're safe. And there were several situations where I was like that on the road. On the freeway, if there's a pothole, I would freak out and I would get scared, and it would be the same thing. There's another time something had fallen off of a car and it was smoking in the middle of the road, and it was busy. It was a busy road too, and I remember like just that internal struggle. You're gonna die, and no, you're home, you're safe, you're home, and slamming on the brakes, pushing on the gas, slamming on the brakes, and I remember like as I went over it with my car, I was screaming, trying to just get through that internal struggle. And there's a lot of road rage at first, and yelling at people, and
Yeah, you're talking about PTSD, right? I mean,
I'm talking about PTSD. Yes, PTSD.
PTSD, clearly.
Is very clearly PTSD. And the interesting thing, after I had gotten remarried and had more kids and a family, and I had gone to counseling, my therapist, she was from the VA, and there's things I didn't realize could be PTSD, but she said, you're having a hard time, and this is PTSD because you don't have security for your family. And so that was something I would never have equated to PTSD.
Yeah, interesting. Lastly, I want you to talk about, you had another situation where you heard your grandfather's voice again. Tell us about that.
Oh yes. So I was in a bad relationship, and it was before I had decided to move up to be with my mom. My mom moved up to Utah while I was deployed, and she could see that I was on a bad road and a bad path. And I was in this bad relationship, and I felt trapped, and it was going back to me thinking like, I feel like I'm better than this. You know, looking back, this is how I felt. I didn't realize it in that time, but I was sobbing and I was crying, and I was in this little ball in my kitchen, just crying and feeling trapped and not knowing what I was going to do. And then I just heard these words: you're stronger than you think you are, and you're more than you think you are. And I stopped crying, and I stood up, and I made my plans and made a better life. And every time I have those moments where I'm struggling and I'm feeling so emotional, those are the things I think about. And I know anything that I get through, anything that's very hard or difficult for me, I hear those words again. You're stronger than you think you are, and you're more than you think you are.
So that's become your sort of your life motto.
That is my life motto. And I also tell that to other people when I know they're having a hard time. I say the same things to them.
I love that. And what I love is now, several years have passed. Your life hasn't always been easy. You continue to have trials and struggles, and yet you're one of the most positive people I think I've met. I mean, I just love that some people have a motto and all they do is have the motto. They don't live by it. You live by your motto, and that's what I love. I think that's.
Thank you.
So you're in nursing school now, right?
Yes, I am in nursing school.
And that's kind of
I'm
the
in
dream
third
that you
career.
had as a little girl. You thought maybe that's something you'd like to do, and now this many years later, you're actually going to do it.
I'm
Uh,
doing it. Yes, I am.
that's
Dreams come true.
good too. Rachel, it's been just a pleasure chatting with you and having the opportunity to again hear your story and let listeners and readers hear your story. And I can't say enough. Thank you for your service and your bravery and your attitude and all the things that you've done. And you're just an amazing person, and it's a pleasure to know you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel. Bye.
Bye.